right, here we go, live, all the way live. Ron G, aka your console from Net Worth Nation, coming to you today with a very interesting broadcast. I wanted to make sure we did not leave you guys in the dark. I know a couple of months ago, my guest on the podcast today, you guys are probably recognizing his face. Absolutely right. From the youth movement collaboration we did, the class of 2023, none other than Mr. Tyrus Philson. Tyrus Philson will be joining us today, ladies and gentlemen, from the founder of Fourth and Goal Sports. And we're going to kind of be looking at the big picture of the student athlete. And Tyrus, I think this is a topic that you probably are very well privy of, because a lot of the information we're going to talk about today organically really talks about you. And so just want to kind of open up a little bit. If our audience doesn't remember, I wanted to kind of let you go into a little bit of detail when we talk about our topic today, which is highlighting the student athlete. And you were a two athlete student. Is that correct? Tell us a little bit about your experience.
Yes, sir. How y'all doing? So, from what I mentioned in our last time talking, I was a two-sport athlete in high school. I did football, I did wrestling, and I did football freshman year, sophomore year, and senior year. Didn't do it junior year, but I did wrestling my junior year as well. And I think one major key point that I learned doing two sports and being, a student athlete was that you're going to have to balance social life and you're going to have to balance the things that have to come first, like education and your athletics.
Absolutely.
So that's
Absolutely.
very important.
Which kind of like brings us right into what we want to talk about. And I think it's very important for us to really do justice. I mean, one of the things we try to do in our network is really add value. And to be honest with you, I think it's very important for people to understand, like, really kind of like what goes on in the mind and what the student athlete is really dealing with. And from the very beginning, Tyrus, now I know you just graduated. And so now, right there's some type of mental posture that has to sort of take position here, where the student now is trying to gather their thoughts. Am I really going to go further than just high school? Is this just a fad? Is this something that I may want to do in college and beyond? And so, when did it come relevant to you to start thinking, okay, maybe I may be able to do this. I may be able to get to school, and how does that look like? What is going through your mind in that aspect, and when does that, I guess, that light go on? When you start thinking like that.
Yes. So I actually was in this position a few months ago, and it's really tough. It's like a situation that came to me in like kind of last minute. It was
Mm,
a blessing in disguise. It was a very surprising moment, and I think that when it comes to the mental positioning of can I play at the next level, it's all about your heart to do it. Like, do you really love what you're about to do?
right.
Are you going to
Right.
be able to withstand the difficulties that come along with it? Because,
Absolutely.
you know, in my position with football, it was like I was thinking of everything that's going to come with this thing. You know what I'm saying? And if you really love something, you're going to be able to withstand the time no matter what difficulties come. You know what I'm saying?
That's right.
So when it comes to mental positioning, it's really something you got to weigh within yourself. Am I really going to be able to withstand and give my 100% commitment?
No, that's real talk, and I don't know that everyone is doing that, and really thinking about how quickly things can change, and then the competition and what it really takes. Because at the end of the day, I would say that the goal right now is for a student to get a full ride scholarship if they can. Uh, and the problem is that the chances of getting a full ride scholarship may not be so simple. I think I don't know. I'm just thinking off the top of my head, but full ride scholarships are not something that are handed out easily. If I'm correct, there's a very small percentage of students that actually get a full ride, So now you're thinking, okay, I really want to do this, but at what cost, right? And if I don't get to go to the school of my dream, are you thinking now and realizing that these athletes now have to pivot quickly and say to themselves, okay, what next? Can I afford the process? Are my parents all in on this? Because it's cute when you're out there running touchdowns and doing full Nelsons and pinning guys on the canvas. That doesn't cost much. That's in high school. But how does that change when now you're in school and you're trying to get the scholarship? I posted here. It says that only a small percentage, somewhere around 1%, get this full ride scholarship. Now that that's a little discouraging, my friend. What do you think?
Yeah, I think I was gonna say, I think when you go from high school to college, it's really like a big, it's really like a big transition. And I'm about to go through that now. But I think that, you know, on the athletic side, it's like from high school to college, it's business, it's
Mm,
business. I
mm,
think when we started off playing our little sports, like when we're as kids in little league, and our parents put us into something that we want to be active in. I know my father and my mother put me in football at a young age, and I fell in love with football. And at that point, from elementary up to middle school, it's just something you play for fun, something to stay active. You get to high school, it's 10 times, 100 times more competitive, and it's training, it's eating, it's hydrating, and it's going to be something you still like, for depending on the person, it's something you still love, but you got to put in extra work for.
mm,
College,
mm.
you can only expect the same thing, except 100 times more difficult, 100 times more competitive, 100 times more, stressful. So you got a plan.
You got a plan. You got a plan. And so, just kind of moving right along on that note there, you see these schools here, and these numbers here are crazy. If you don't know, University of North Carolina, we're talking about $210,000 for 4 years. University of Michigan, and I just pulled these rabbits out of the hat because you get the idea. 227. What we got? Oregon 179, and I think what's that? Villanova 311. So these are real numbers, guys. Out there. I mean, this is not a cake pan. This is not a walk in the park. And you'd have to be living under a rock if you don't hear the complaints in this country, about the student loan debts. So now you're putting a lot of pressure on a young person who, like you said, Tyrus, you're at this door and you see that you have an opportunity to play. I recall my nephew Jasper when he was at Coastal Carolina a few years back, and I remember he wanted to come up to Maryland with me because I was actually living right outside of College Park at the time by the University of Maryland. And one of the coaches there had heavily recruited him, and he went to Coastal. And now I really wish he had stayed at Coastal when I think back on it. Josh Norman, Isaiah Likely, Lorenzo Talialo Ferrero. Excuse me if I put your name, Lorenz. But those guys came out of that program, and University of Maryland, I mean, we all know. Actually, he was there with the guy, the tight end, Vernon, that used to play with the 49ers.
Vernon Davis.
Yeah, Vernon Davis. What's his name? Dominic, the gentleman that's on the does the ESPN. I think his name is not Dominic Cromartie. The other Dominic, Foxworth. Uh,
Gotcha.
yeah, he was with those guys. And the sad part is that he didn't get the full ride scholarship, and he was good. I mean, he stayed with me off campus, but the money for the books and and all the other things that he had to keep up with, it wasn't a game. And he sacrificed a lot, and he got a shot at the Redskins. He didn't make it through the camp. and guess what? He's still paying that student loan bill,
Right.
you know. And I think Jasper just turned 39. So you get my drift, right? He'll probably be paying that bill until he's probably in his 40s. So
Right.
you guys are dealing with some serious things here. And then when you push that out, now you look at the very thing that you think you live for, and that is the draft, right? And you go to school, you do all of this, and you're hoping and praying, and um, you might get drafted and you might not. And I don't know if you guys are looking, but these numbers, they don't look too promising. 73,000 high school ball players in football get to the NCAA level, which is pretty good when you compare it to other sports, Tyrus. You know what I mean?
Right.
But only 7.3% make it, meaning only 16,000 become eligible for the draft. 73,000 to 16,000. That's a big drop off, my friend. I don't know how anyone could mistake those numbers and think that the chances, are very high. I mean, I know football all boils down to 259 players, right? At the end of the day, that's all who's going to make it. So
Right.
um, I don't know if we understand at home how to prepare our athletes the right way. Now, you're a little different. I think you're focusing on other things outside of sports. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. I plan on majoring in broadcast journalism at Bowie State University, which I mentioned in our last conversation.
Nice,
Yes, sir.
nice. And so you kind of understand where we're going with this, right? And so
100%.
the reality of it is that these guys can very well get drafted. I'm not sitting here, and I don't think Tyrus and myself are sitting here discouraging any student athlete who has a dream and who's dreaming big. We're going to support that, obviously, in every way we can. But at the same time, what we are saying is maybe take a page out of Tyrus's playbook a little bit and kind of look at some of the other areas that you want to fortify yourselves because, again, these numbers they're not looking too good. I mean, less than 11 of 100 or 10.5% of NCAA senior male baseball players will get drafted by a Major League Baseball team. Those numbers just don't look as promising as I thought. And to be honest with you, some of these numbers even shocked me, and I thought I knew them, but it's almost like they got worse over time. Tyrus, not better, you know?
You know, if I could interject real quick, I would like to say, going back to the last slide concerning the percentages, I
Yes.
really think that I really feel like that goes to show you that it comes a time where you have to be realistic and realize everything concerning sports comes to an end as at whatever point that may be. We love the game, we love the
Yeah.
sport, and we can hang on to it as long as we can when it concerns to our career, right?
Yes.
So,
Absolutely.
like, if you really want football, basketball, baseball, etc., to be your career, and you love that, you got to plan for it. You have to practice for it. You have to prioritize it, but don't prioritize it to the point where you don't have a backup plan. Because at the end of the day, we're going to outlive our careers, and
Yes.
you have to plan for life after that career.
Exactly right. Exactly right. And I think this is what we wanted to highlight in today's broadcast and podcast. And I hope we're bringing to light a lot of these concerns because I don't even think we do a good enough job as parents, too. Because, I mean, let's say, for example, you do get drafted, you know, now what? Tyrus, right? So now you go from, living in Maryland, USA, and then tomorrow you could be somewhere in Phoenix, you could be in Toronto if you play basketball or baseball. How do you just go from being in one area all of your life and then all of a sudden, instantly, you're in another city, another state, right? Do you take in consideration what goes on in the mind of someone who's not even accustomed to that? I think we remember, and he's big time now, podcaster, Kwame Brown. I don't know if you, I know it's before your
Yep.
time, but
Kwame Brown.
you're a sports gentleman, you know. And Kwame, everyone made fun of him when he was drafted. He was very introvert at the time because he lived with his brothers, all his life in Georgia. And he had never been, DC is a huge, huge city for someone coming, from the South. You know what I mean?
Right.
And
Big adjustment.
he really never, you could tell he was so uncomfortable in his own skin at that time. I mean, now he's phenomenal. I listen to him a lot. He's very intelligent, but I think he brought a lot of light to the type of pressure. And you remember, I think he was only 18 at the time when Michael Jordan drafted him. Is that right?
I believe so. Yeah,
Yeah,
18.
yeah, 18.
Because I think he was straight out of high school.
He was straight out of high school. So this is what we're talking about, right? So you get drafted. One minute you're here, the next minute, boom, nation's capital, Washington, D.C., and everybody's coming at you at 100 miles an hour. And you're just basically a young man, you're a kid. And unfortunately, if we as parents do not really educate and prepare, our young people properly, then they may win on the football field or the basketball court, but they'll be losing, in the game of life. You know what I mean? And I think, like what you're saying, that's should be more important, than anything else. I want to kind of look at the NFL a little bit, not to pick on it, but I think we all kind of know where this is going. The NFL, out of all the sports, seems to be the shortest of careers. Why do you think that is, Tyrus? You played that sport on a high school level, so you obviously have some insight.
Yes. I mean, I can attest to for the high school football, but obviously I can't attest for NFL. But I can still weigh my opinion on what I think the reason is, and I think, in my humble opinion, I think the reason for why football and NFL lasts so short, and is because I think you get these guys together, they're playing, but also you have 53 spots for one roster. For each roster, you got 53 spots. Then you got the practice squad. You know, so if you're not drafted, you could be picked up, maybe signed as an undrafted free agent. And even if you do get drafted, you might get cut before the final rosters are
Yes.
made. So I think that it's kind of like it's tough because the NFL is just one league and you can only fit so much. And then also when you consider the players who do make it and they have short careers themselves, I think the big reason for that is injuries. It's like injuries just everywhere, everywhere. It's like no team is gonna stay 100% healthy. Everybody's gonna get injured at some point.
And I mean, think of how many times you may have hit someone or someone hit you, on high school level. You ain't gonna let nobody know you hurt, right? You know what I'm
Right,
saying?
right.
You're gonna be like, good hit, good hit. You're gonna keep on running back to the huddle. But when you go home and nobody's around and mom's not around, I'm not around, you're like, God dang, man. Oh, you know what I mean? Right? You hear that ringing in your head. And just imagine you're only 14, 15, and 16. You know what I'm saying? So can you it's already started for you, you know what I mean, the hitting, so over time, over time. So I think you can attest, you're right. You haven't played on the NFL level, but even on the high school level, I remember getting hit by a guy that was so small, and I joke with him now to this day. Actually, he's on YouTube doing all these exercises. My man, Deep, big shout out to Deep. Guy looks like he's still 28, but he hit me, man. And I'm looking at this little dude like it don't make sense, I should have mauled this kid. And but football is that type of sport, right? You don't
Right.
just walk into it, right? So, um, but yeah, man, I like what you're saying, and again, I think it's been well documented as of late with the sport. But again, not to just pick on football, NBA. I mean, these guys get hurt too. I didn't realize 4.5 years in basketball. I think you're like me. Like we kind of look to the Kobe's, the LeBrons, the Vince Carters, and these guys are just, we don't appreciate these guys enough, Tyrus. The average basketball player playing 4.5 years, and if Carter plays 22 years, he basically played 5 career lifetimes in one person. You know what I'm saying? That's unbelievable. You know, uh,
It just goes back to like how much dedication you really have to, and I was talking about the dedication before. I was talking about the dedication that it takes just to even get there, but also it takes a lot of dedication to really stay there too, because you know these guys really got to take care of their bodies. They got to take care of their bodies because their body is their career.
their bodies is their career. And, we could sit here and talk about Vince Carter, Kobe, LeBron James, but we know that there's so many guys that have come in this league and not have, for whatever reason, couldn't even get through to the second contract, to be signed. I mean, I don't know. I'm just like, how does that happen? But it does. And I think we have to be realistic, and understand that even in basketball, it's less physical as it appears on paper. And even now, right, you got the 3-point shot. Guys are not really going in that much to the basket, are they?
No, not as much.
So not as much, and yet they're still, going down in epic proportions. So I'm going to sit here and say I think, realistically speaking, that if we stop underestimating and if anything, overestimate the fact that your career in sports is going to be rather short, I think you're going to have more guys playing longer and playing smarter. And this stat we got here, just as a whole, NBA, NHL, you name it, everyone's going in and out. And going back to your plan, if you've played 3 or 4 years and you got a $5 million or $10 million contract, how should you wrap your head around those resources that you got in that contract? What do you think you should be thinking when you make that kind of money?
Well, I think when you're in that position, um, I think the first thing you should do is consider how you can expand what you've been given. Because
I like
realistically, uh, realistically, when you think of these players, getting these big contracts, a lot of people want to be negative and say, "Oh, well, they're overpaid and they don't deserve this or that." You don't consider how much time they're putting in away from their families. That's why that goes back to social life. A lot of these guys, their social life is crumbled
shut.
for
Yes.
sports, and and what for money? You know what I'm saying? So, and money's one thing, right? But when it comes to that, it's like expanding. Can you expand what you've been awarded? Because a lot of these guys, to be honest, they're they're worth more than how much they're getting paid in their salary, but they can take that small amount in their salary and expand it so that way they can set themselves up for when the game is over.
Absolutely. So you almost see how important, what we were talking about previously on our podcast months back, how important it is on the high school level to have a certain way about you, right? And like you said, being around, you named your coaches and your mom, like for your coach's philosophy. You hear what they say: if you hang around 10 broke friends, you'll be the 11th broke friend, right? Like your coach says, you see people around your circle. So you got to be around other people, right? Like you and I connect organically, right? Because we both love sports. We love the same people. We both love doing podcasts, right? So there's a lot of commonality here, and we like adding value to people, and helping people. So you're right. And these athletes, that's like not all of them. Now, there's a few. I think we all know who they are. But the reality of it is that most of them are not gifted in that area, and it's unfortunate. But again, we have to point the finger at ourselves, because I don't know that as parents we realize just how quickly one day your child is in your arms. The next day, he's breaking the record as the all-time NBA leading scorer. Like, yeah. I remember when Kevin Durant was at Montrose. We went up there to see him. This kid. I remember when he used to hang out on Bright Seat Road, right by the Redskins Stadium with the little buckets. Him and Michael Beasley and who's the other guy that came from that area? Delonte West. I remember all of those guys. And it's just crazy how fast it went from there to there. So yeah, real good points, Tyrus. But moving along and just looking at what we're saying, it's just flat out poor planning, right? Not really thinking of, okay, if I'm gonna play 5 years in the league, what am I going to do after that? Am I going to start a broadcast, a podcast? Do I have a family? I mean, like you said, what are we doing with these finances and these resources? And I love what you said about the money these athletes make. But again, that just shows you that a lot of people don't have the business model. Do you know what the NFL brokered that deal, the last NFL deal was with the networks? A lot of people don't pay attention to that. You
No,
know,
I'm not sure.
they don't pay attention to the deal that the NBA just brokered. The NBA is brokering deals for billions and billions of dollars. And like any other job, if your company is making millions and millions and millions of dollars because of you being the worker, then you have to be elevated and rewarded in proportion to the money that your employer is making.
Right.
And so a lot of people don't understand that sports is making unrealistic amounts of money and the players should be awarded for it. It's just that simple. But you're right. It's the why did they pay? Why should Barkley get $12 million? And speaking of, and I salute to my boy Saquon. I want to give him a shout out because I really was impressed with what he said the other day. And he made it clear. He said, listen, I know my people don't make this type of money. And I know, based on what Tyrus and Ron is saying, my career might be over tomorrow. So I'm going to take this money and play this next year as if it's my last, and we'll see what happens. And I love that response because that is the right response. You know what I mean? I mean, you remember what happened to Le'Veon Bell.
Yes. So when I was reviewing the and closely watching the Saquon situation, I really felt like he was being lowballed, and I felt like he's. I mean, I think this is the majority opinion. He's worth it. He's worth it. Saquon Barkley is worth it. He's the best running back on the New York Giants. He's the best player on the New York Giants, and not only that, in my opinion, this is my personal opinion, he's a top 3 running back in the NFL. And I really feel like his circumstances as far as his negotiations with the Giants was based off of the collective productivity of his position. And I feel like that's unfair. You shouldn't be judged based off of the productivity of the collective position you play. You should be based off of your personal productivity as a player. And his productivity, I would say, outweighs in comparison to the Giants quarterback Daniel Jones, who just got paid. But Daniel Jones' position, they're automatically going to get more because they're valued more.
Absolutely, absolutely. I like something too that you said there about him, but not only that, he outside of his playing, he represents the brand, right? Like the good, clean young man, keeps his nose out of trouble. And New York City and DC and Chicago. I mean, let's be honest. You
Right.
just roll out of bed and you get in trouble in those places. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Never made the back of the tabloids. And he's a class citizen. And then, of course, at the end of the day, he's just a relatively good dude. I had a guy that had him in the Uber. This was right before he got drafted, and he said, "Man, the guy didn't talk about football. He was like, so how is it raising kids, and how's the family, and do y'all do this and every other thing other than football?" and he said he never been in a car with nobody like that before, and he was jealous that we drafted him. He was an Eagles fan, of course. Hater. Anyway, but back to the point of, and you're right. But again, it goes back to what we're saying right here. If Saquon Barkley doesn't make another nine, he's made close to 20 million cash. And you and I can only hope that we get our hands on it, right? Because you and I got some, we know what we'll do with that kind of money, I'm sure. And I'm going to tell you something. If we get a hold of that kind of money, it ain't running out. It's not going to run out. It's going to last us, and it'll probably go to our kids, right?
Yes, sir.
So all reality is that poor planning has a lot to do on the high school level. I think this is why we're doing this, because we're reaching out to the student athletes who are right here, right now, listening to this podcast, trying to get you to pivot and maybe, just maybe, start thinking things through, because tomorrow you could be drafted. Tomorrow you can end up on a campus at Michigan State, Florida State, Georgetown University, or what have you. And now you're stuck thinking through these things after the fact. And I think what we're trying to do is get you in front of these things. You know what I mean?
I think it's very important to be intentional in your path, because like if you are so set on what you want to do, then invest in it, plan in it, and be intentional. Like be intentional. Say, okay, you say like when we're little kids and we're in class and they ask us what we want to be, what we said then might change over time.
That's right.
And that's fine. If you're gonna go from one thing to another, be intentional in pivoting. But if you're gonna stay on a path of, hey, I want to go to the league, I'm trying to make the NFL, NBA, MLB, whatever league, um, then you gotta move like you're already there.
That's right.
You
That's
gotta
right.
move like you're already there.
That's right. That's right. That's how you stay in front of it. You move like you're already there, you know?
Right.
Absolutely. But 60 million, 400 million, 40 million, 250 million. And I got to watch this documentary again. It was called Broke. I don't know if you saw it, the 30 for 30 episode that talked about uh, that over 70%, now that number is bizarre, of
Right.
professional athletes, this is as a whole, across the board, fell on financial hardships. We talked about this a little bit. Relatively short careers, and then of course, if you have 10 million or 12 million or 30 million, how do you go about it? You live in a place like DC. Everything in DC is expensive. Do you say, listen, this is just a place where I work? I'm going to send my money back home, like Kwame did. Kwame Brown owns damn near half of Georgia. He's got tractors, he's got trucks, he's got all kinds of businesses. Because even back in the early 2000s, DC has always been a very expensive hotspot. So again, thinking and being ahead of it and not letting it come behind. I mean, Warren Sapp, Swoops, John Daly, and of course Tyson and Holyfield. I mean, this is unreal.
Right.
60 million, 40 million, 50 million, 250 million, $400 million. These men lost all of this type of money. Now it's funny, to Tyson's point, and I received it very well. He said he's at more peace now, broke, than he ever had his entire life. And I think you already know where that's going, Tyrus, right? All the wannabe friends, the leeches, everybody pulling at you. Um,
100%. I think I don't mean to interrupt you.
no, please.
I think that a lot of these people who are in these situations, like when it comes to athletes, a lot of these people, unfortunately, are have messed up circles, and a lot of our circles we choose, and a lot of our circles we don't choose. And what I mean by that is, you
Mm,
got a lot of leeches in your family who's gonna, might derail you and see, oh, I see. Mans is doing something. He's doing good things. And I want to, take advantage of that. It's a lot of people who are like that, And I'm sure if Mike Tyson was on this platform today, he'd be the first to tell you he probably had people in his circle that was like that,
For sure. Yeah.
and so on and so forth.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and it kind of goes back to what we said that at early age, if you don't get ahead of this, because I mean, you got to remember, Tyson won the championship. He was only 20 years old.
Right.
You know,
I
so
think I think I heard a story recently. Um, I was watching Dr. Boyce Watkins talking about um, he was talking about Mike Tyson and his financial situation from then till now. And I think there was a story I heard on his channel in that video. He was talking about there was a time where like Mike Tyson was going out with friends. He would just throw cash in the middle of the street and just ride around, throw some cash around. So I think also like not even just the circles, because like in your circle there could be financial liabilities that you mistakenly choose to associate with, or you sometimes you're trying to get out of that situation, but it's kind of following you, or you yourself are the financial liability because you might not have the education on what you're supposed to be doing with your money.
100%. And if anybody is paying attention to what we're getting ready to say next, it is this: money is not what makes a millionaire mindset, guys. It's not the cash, it's what's here. See, when you have this, the money follows organically, right? It just does. Money goes after those people who produce, who create, who know how to invest it, flip it, and encourage it, and do all that kind of stuff. And just as much as if you're a person who doesn't have anything to offer, I can put as many dollars on top of you as possible, and I know it can't be sustained. And the biggest thing that I think we're trying to bring to light on this podcast is that if you don't have a plan, regardless of what, where, when, and how, it's almost impossible to sustain any level of wealth success without a plan. And so that's why we're saying what we're saying. You can't just wait until you start making astronomical amounts of money to start trying to figure it out. I mean, sometimes it can happen. And we all know Magic is one of the phenoms of that. I think he's done an incredible job. Something taught me about Magic early on in his life. I don't know if you watched the Showtime series Tyrus on
Yes, I did.
HBO. You saw that?
It was amazing.
It's a phenomenal series, and I think the indication of who Magic was going to be was early. If you remember the scene with him and his dad when they first met Dr. Buss and
Yep.
the old was it Jeff Kent Cook? Actually, that used to be the stadium right down there where your Washington football team play. He
Yep.
owned it before Snyder.
Yep.
Yeah. So I didn't even know that. I was like, wait a minute, this guy's name is familiar. But anyway, back to the point. Magic is sitting there automatically spinning his wheels, realizing what you just said about the Saquon situation. He knew his worth even as a 19-year-old rookie. And he told him what he wanted to get paid. And you remember that scene, and the father was like, "What are you doing? This is more money than we'll ever have, you know?"
Yeah.
And he said, "Well, Dad, I'm sorry." And they got up and they walked out. You know? And obviously, we know what happened after that. But had Magic never done that, who knows what they would have paid him? You know what I'm saying? So
I
there we
think
are.
I think in that situation, a lot of times people are so impressed and so like intrigued to see like, oh wow, y'all are giving me this, but you shouldn't weigh it off of what they're giving you. You should weigh it off of um what your worth,
That's
what
right.
your worth is, what your productivity is.
What you bring to the table. Absolutely right. Absolutely right. So as we, kind of go through the effects there, and what about after your career? Warren Sapp, by the way, I watched the documentary on him, and he was saying that the NFL cuts you off benefits after 5 years, and I didn't know that.
Wow.
And he said, after 5 years, they cut you off their health plan. And he said, where can I go at 37 years of age and go to a broker and get insurance or health coverage or whatever when I didn't been getting knocked in my head on the NFL level? He said, nobody's going to write me a policy, you know? And I thought about that. I said, man, he's absolutely right. And you see on the screen here with CTE and concussions and mental illness and memory loss and arthritis. And, I mean, these guys, they're really banged up. And I don't know when anybody last checked, but health coverage and health insurance is not cheap. It's pretty expensive, you know? I don't know that these guys realize the sacrifices that their bodies. At young ages, you don't feel it, but I even know with me, I got elbow issues from playing ball. One day, my knees, my quads just couldn't take another hit, and boom, those went down on me. So, a lot of injuries in my late 40s that I thought, I was invincible, but time and chance just happens to all of us, and I think as these guys get older and not realizing these effects and how much it's going to cost them, at the ends of their careers. And, at the end of the day, whose responsibility is it? The responsibility is ours. Tyrus, these owners will spin you around and give you pennies on the dollar as long as you let them do it. They will run you in the ground as long as they let you do it. We've seen these guys over and over get kind of pushed by the wayside after they're no good no more, and then they bring in a new breed of ball players, and the cycle just continues and continues. So I hope that we brought a lot of light and shed a lot of light on this situation. And what kind of closing remarks do you have, in retrospect about all the things that we kind of covered today?
I was thinking when you were talking about the situation where you were talking about the NFL cutting off after 5 years.
Mm.
And I was thinking, like, imagine when you're getting drafted, you're going into the league, and then next thing you know, you're thrusted into a whole situation of your career. And it goes back to what I was saying about how to maintain your career and social life. These guys are basically year round. It's year round football. Even in the off season, you only get also a few months before it's OTAs, training camp, preseason, and next thing you know, the season is right on back. And so, think about doing that for think about the players who play a long period of time. Think about doing that over and over and over, and then when your career is finally over, and you take a second to stop and focus on what you're supposed to be doing. It's almost like, oh shoot, I've lost all this time where I should have done this a long time ago. It's almost like you're asleep and you finally woke up and you're like, oh shoot, it's 5 p.m.
Absolutely. And you almost like you isolated, right? Because you only can be around whoever that is in that world. So
Right.
You're right. The voice of whatever and reasoning is not next to you. It benefits all those coaches to have you out there, those assistant coaches, because their careers and their jobs are on the line based on your productivity. The coach is always the first ones to get whacked, right? So, it's tough out there. And I really wanted to really kind of just peel back behind the curtains, guys, and really get you guys as athletes to really start thinking ahead, looking at putting pieces and steps in place. And like you said, if you get drafted, what's the worst thing can happen? You make a few $1,000,000, right? You got a plan, right? You got some guys back home that everybody knows a LeBron James story. Is probably one of the more phenomenal stories that he promoted a lot of his guys, built their education, pumped them up, and then they in turn were able to add value to his company. You know what I'm saying? So how many athletes can end their careers and know that they're not broke because whoever they thought had their back, like you said, their mom? What happened with Kobe? Was it the story where his parents or something had taken his trophies and all that type of stuff? You know,
I did. I don't know the specifics about that, but I do know that I've heard that he had some bad bad relationship with his parents or a situation. When you're a professional athlete and you have the and you come from a two-parent household, I think that's like it's you really gotta connect with those people because those are the people like that's supposed to be a part of your circle. And if you
exactly.
can't, it makes it very difficult if you can't rely on those people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, I mean, at this point, I think we hope that you guys were able to get something out of today's podcast. We're going to go ahead and wrap it up, but I hope that everything that we informed you guys today was informative. We're going to probably be doing some more of these and actually looking to get some athletes who've actually gone through this, maybe on the next podcast to kind of speak to their experiences in real time. So, but I hope you guys enjoyed today's podcast. Keep your eyes out on Tyrus's podcast. Tyrus, when do you plan on doing your podcast? Are you looking to do something every week, or what are you thinking about Fourth and Goal Sports?
Yes, I'm gonna try to do a video every week and maybe more. We'll see. But definitely every week I like to drop a video for you guys. Go ahead and subscribe to Fourth and Goal Sports on YouTube and Instagram and go ahead and show some support. Gonna be dropping some new content soon.
Perfect, guys. Perfect. All right, guys. Y'all getting it from the source, live and direct. Ron G here, aka the Net Worth Nation, coming to you soon. Peace, enjoy. We out.